When a billionaire met the only woman who didn't want his money. No one noticed the man standing at the edge of the charity gala except the security guard who almost stopped him at the door. His suit was simple. Perfectly tailored but plain. No flashy watch. No entourage. No signs of importance. To everyone else, he looked like a guest who had wandered into the wrong room. A man who didn't belong among chandeliers, champagne towers, and people who measured worth by labels. "Sir, this event is invitation only," the guard said coldly, blocking his path. The man didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply reached into his jacket and handed over a small, cream-colored card. The guard glanced at it and froze. Across the room, laughter echoed. A group of wealthy donors stood near the stage, mocking a young woman who held a tray of glasses with trembling hands. She wore a modest dress, pale blue, simple and elegant, but clearly not designer. Her dark hair was tied neatly behind her head, and her eyes were downcast as whispers followed her. "Is she a volunteer or just lost?" one woman sneered. "She looks too innocent to be here," another laughed. "Probably never even kissed a man." They didn't know her name was Elena Hart. They didn't know she was a virgin by choice, not ignorance. And they certainly didn't know that the quiet man at the door, the one they ignored, was Adrian Vale, billionaire CEO of one of the most powerful global investment firms in the world. Adrian Vale didn't notice the whispers at first. He hadn't attended a social event in years. After all, emotions had never survived long in his life. Love had been something he lost before he truly understood it. And since then, money had replaced feeling. Power had replaced connection. Silence had replaced hope. But then he saw her. Elena nearly dropped a glass when someone brushed past her roughly. Champagne spilled onto her hands, cold and sticky. The laughter around her grew louder. "Careful," a man said mockingly. "You'll ruin the floor. Do you even know how much this place costs?" Her face burned with embarrassment. She whispered an apology, though she wasn't sure to whom. Adrian felt something shift in his chest. It was unfamiliar. Sure. Uncomfortable. He watched as Elena bent down to clean the spill herself, while people stepped around her as if she were invisible. No one offered help. No one cared. Except him. Adrian took a step forward. The room seemed to slow as he crossed the marble floor. Conversations faded behind him. He knelt beside her without hesitation, taking a napkin from his pocket and helping her wipe the mess. "You don't have to do that," Elena whispered, startled. "Yes," he said quietly. "I do." Their eyes met. For the first time in years, Adrian Vale felt something real. Elena saw sadness behind his calm expression. Not arrogance. Not superiority. Just exhaustion. Loneliness. A man who had been carrying too much weight alone. "Thank you," she said softly. A sharp voice interrupted them. "Excuse me," one of the donors snapped. "Staff shouldn't be on the floor like that. And you, sir, this area is for contributors." Adrian stood slowly. "I am a contributor," he said. The donor laughed. "Of course you are." Adrian said nothing more. He simply turned and walked away. Elena watched him go, confused and strangely disappointed. She didn't know why his presence had felt different. Safer. Warmer. Real. That night, Elena went home to her small apartment, the one she shared with silence and prayer. She had grown up believing love was sacred. Something earned through respect, patience and kindness. She had turned down men who saw her purity as a challenge or a prize. She wanted love, but only if it was meaningful. Adrian, meanwhile, stood alone in his penthouse, staring at the city lights. The silence was deafening. He had billions. And nothing. The next morning, Elena reported to her job at a small cafe near the financial district. It was quiet, humble, and far from the glittering world of galas and billionaires. She preferred it that way. When the bell above the door rang, she looked up. Her heart skipped. Adrian stood there, wearing the same calm expression, as if the world hadn't mocked him the night before. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me," he said. She smiled gently. "I remember kindness." They sat. They talked. Not about money. Not about status. They talked about dreams. Loss. Faith. Fear. Elena spoke of her belief that love was not something to rush or use. Adrian listened, really listened, for the first time in years. And when she stood to refill his cup, he noticed something remarkable. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't trying to gain anything. She was just being herself. Across the street, two men from the gala recognized Adrian through the cafe window. "That's him," one scoffed. "The guy who pretended to be important." They laughed, until Adrian stood, paid for every customer in the cafe, and walked out with Elena beside him. The truth was coming. And when it did, it would change everything. When the world mocked her and he let it. The rumor spread faster than Elena expected. In a city obsessed with appearances, it didn't take long for whispers to follow her from the cafe to the sidewalks, from quiet corners to loud conversations. Someone from the gala had seen her leave with Adrian. Someone else had decided she was ambitious. Another claimed she was playing innocent to trap a wealthy man. None of them asked her who she was. None of them asked Adrian why he chose her. Elena felt it the next time she returned to the charity foundation where she volunteered twice a week. Conversations stopped when she entered the room. Smiles looked forced. Eyes lingered a second too long. One woman finally said it out loud. "You should be careful," she said sweetly, her voice sharp underneath. "Men like that don't look for love. They look for entertainment." Elena nodded politely. "Thank you for your concern." She didn't defend herself. She never had. Across town, Adrian Vale sat in a glass-walled boardroom, listening to executives praise his latest acquisition. Their words blurred together. For the first time in his career, numbers didn't matter. All he could think about was Elena. The way she listened without judgment. The way she didn't ask for anything. The way she looked him in the eye, not with hunger but with calm certainty. His assistant cleared her throat. "Sir, the charity board has concerns." Adrian looked up slowly. "About what?" "About your association." That single word made something harden in his chest. "They believe it could damage the foundation's image." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "Because she's not wealthy?" The room went silent. "No, someone lied. Because she's not suitable." Adrian stood. The meeting ended immediately. Elena didn't know any of this when Adrian invited her to lunch the next day, at the same cafe. She arrived nervous, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "I need to ask you something," she said quietly once he sat down. He nodded. "Anything. Why are you being kind to me?" The question surprised him. "People like you don't usually notice people like me." Adrian studied her face. "That's where you're wrong." She waited. "I noticed you because you didn't notice me." Elena didn't fully understand what he meant, but she felt the truth in it. The door burst open. 3 donors from the gala walked in, laughing loudly. Their eyes landed on Elena instantly. "Well, look at that," one said. "She moves fast." Elena stiffened. Adrian stood calmly. "Apologize," he said. They laughed harder. "To her?" Another scoffed. She knew what she was doing. Elena rose from her seat. "It's okay," she whispered. "Please don't." "It's not okay," Adrian said firmly. The men smirked. "Or what?" Adrian pulled out his phone and made one call. By the time the men finished their coffee, they received alerts. Frozen accounts, revoked contracts, canceled partnerships. Their laughter died. You did this?" one stammered. Adrian met their eyes coldly. "No. You did." They left in silence. Elena stared at him, stunned. "Who are you?" she whispered. Adrian hesitated. "For now," he said gently, "I'm just a man who refuses to let kindness be punished." That night, Elena prayed longer than usual. She prayed for clarity, for protection, for strength because she knew her life was changing. Adrian, alone again in his penthouse, stared at his reflection. For the first time in years, power didn't make him feel empty. It made him feel responsible. And he knew, loving Elena would require something he hadn't given anyone in over a decade. Vulnerability. The day she was shamed in public, and the truth stood up for her. The invitation arrived on thick ivory paper, stamped with gold lettering and sealed with authority. Elena read it twice, her fingers trembling. Annual Founders Luncheon, Meridian Hall. It was the same hall where she had once been laughed at for spilling champagne. The same room where whispers had followed her like shadows. She didn't want to go. Every instinct told her to stay away. Adrian noticed her hesitation immediately. "You don't have to," he said gently. Elena shook her head. "If I keep hiding, they win." Adrian didn't argue. He admired her courage too much. Meridian Hall buzzed with power that afternoon. CEOs, politicians, donors, people who believed influence was inherited, not earned. Elena felt their eyes the moment she entered beside Adrian. Conversations slowed. Smiles tightened. "She's back," someone whispered. Adrian kept his hand close, but didn't touch her. He had learned that Elena valued choice above all else. At their table sat members of the charity board. The same people who had questioned her worth. One woman leaned forward, her tone sharp but polite. "Elena dear," she said, "we were curious. How did you meet Mr. Vale?" The room leaned in. Elena answered honestly. By accident. Laughter rippled. And what do you do exactly? Another asked. I work at a cafe. I volunteer. I help where I can. Someone scoffed. So nothing impressive. Elena felt heat rise in her chest, but she didn't bow her head. I believe dignity is impressive, she said softly. The laughter stopped. Then it happened. A man stood near the podium, the same donor who had mocked her before. He raised his glass. Let's be honest, he announced loudly. We all know why she's here. We've seen this before. Innocence as strategy. Purity as leverage. Gasps echoed. Elena froze. Her face went pale, but her spine stayed straight. Adrian stood. That's enough, he said. The man smirked. Relax, Vale. We're just calling it what it is. Elena finally spoke, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. I didn't come here to defend myself, she said. I came because I believe people deserve respect, even when they're different. Someone laughed nervously. And I didn't come here for money, she continued. I came because I care. Silence. Then applause, slow, scattered, uncertain. The donor rolled his eyes. Words are cheap. Adrian stepped forward. So is arrogance. He turned to the room. Allow me to introduce myself properly. Every head turned. My name is Adrian Vale, founder and CEO of Vale Global Holdings. The foundation you're sitting in exists because I funded it. The projects you praise exist because I approved them. And the contracts some of you lost, his gaze settled coldly on the donor, were revoked because disrespect has consequences. The room erupted. Faces drained of color. I don't care who you are, Adrian continued. If you humiliate someone who has done nothing but act with grace, you don't deserve my partnership. The donor tried to speak, but security was already escorting him out. Elena stood stunned. Adrian turned to her, his voice soft again. You never needed my name to matter. Tears filled her eyes. After the luncheon, headlines exploded. Billionaire CEO defends unknown woman against elite donors. Power meets principle at Meridian Hall. But the attention was suffocating. Elena retreated. The next day she didn't show up to the cafe or answer her phone. Adrian panicked. When he finally found her at the small chapel she visited in the evenings, she was sitting alone, hands clasped tightly. I never wanted this, she whispered. I never wanted to be protected by power. I wanted to be loved for who I am. Adrian knelt beside her. Then tell me what to do. She looked at him, eyes shining with quiet strength. Don't save me, she said. Stand with me. Adrian understood. This wasn't about rescue. It was about respect. And he was ready to earn it. The day he lost everything and found what money could never buy. The silence between them lasted longer than any argument ever could. Elena didn't leave angrily. She didn't accuse Adrian. She didn't cry in front of him. That was what made it hurt more. She simply asked for space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to remain herself in a world that now wanted to define her by his name. Adrian respected her choice, even though it felt like tearing something vital out of his chest. For the first time in his life, Adrian Vale felt powerless. The media didn't give her space. Cameras waited outside the cafe. Strangers speculated about her purity, her intentions, her past. Comment sections were cruel. Some called her a saint. Others called her a manipulator. None of them knew her. Elena stopped going out unless she had to. She stopped volunteering publicly. She stopped answering calls. Not because she was ashamed, but because she refused to let noise distort her soul. Meanwhile, Adrian's board turned against him. You've become reckless, one executive said sharply. Publicly humiliating donors for a woman? Adrian didn't flinch. For respect. This is bad for business. Adrian leaned forward. Then maybe the business needs to change. The vote was swift. They removed him as acting CEO. News headlines exploded again, but this time they weren't flattering. Billionaire loses control of his own empire after emotional scandal. Adrian walked out of the building he built with nothing but a calm expression and a quiet resolve. That night, he stood alone in his penthouse, surrounded by art he never loved, views he never appreciated, and wealth that suddenly felt useless. He thought of Elena, sitting in silence, choosing dignity over comfort. And he made the hardest decision of his life. He sold his controlling shares. He donated the majority of his fortune to foundations that serve people without power, without voice, without privilege. Not for redemption. For alignment. Elena learned of it weeks later from a friend. She didn't believe it at first. When Adrian finally stood outside her apartment, no security, no suit, no authority, she saw the truth in his eyes. "I don't want to own anything that costs me you," he said quietly. Elena's voice trembled. "Why would you give up everything?" Adrian swallowed. "Because I finally understand something. Love isn't about control. It's about choice. And I choose you without leverage." Tears streamed down her face. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that if I stayed, I'd disappear into your world." He shook his head. "Then let me disappear into yours." They didn't rush into anything. They walked. They talked. They healed. Adrian learned how to live without applause. Elena learned how to let herself be seen without fear. Months passed. Then came the invitation, this time addressed to Elena Hart alone. A global humanitarian summit wanted her to speak. About dignity. About respect. About choosing values over power. Adrian sat in the audience, anonymous, watching the woman he loved command a room, not with wealth but with truth. When she finished, the room stood. And Adrian cried. Because the most beautiful thing he had ever witnessed wasn't success. It was integrity. When love won and the world finally learned to bow, the standing ovation felt endless. Elena Hart stood at the center of the stage, hands lightly clasped, her posture calm, her expression serene. She wasn't wearing designer clothes. She wasn't surrounded by security. Yet the room, filled with presidents of corporations, policymakers, and global leaders, listened to her as if nothing else mattered. She spoke without anger. Without accusation. She spoke about dignity. "Power," Elena said softly into the microphone, "does not come from wealth, titles, or influence. Power comes from how we treat people when we think no one is watching." The room was silent. "I was once laughed at in a room like this," she continued. "Not because I had done anything wrong, but because I didn't belong to the right class. I learned something important that day. Respect is not something you demand. It's something you live." Adrian sat in the back row. No one recognized him. And he had never felt more proud. After the summit, a line formed, not for photos, not for favors, but to thank Elena. Some apologized. Some cried. Some admitted they had once judged others without knowing their story. Instant karma doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with awakening. Outside the building, reporters rushed forward. "Elena," one called. "Are you still involved with Adrian Vale?" She paused. "Yes," she said honestly. "But not as his shadow. As his equal." Across the city, the old board of Vale Global Holdings faced collapse. Investors pulled out. Whistleblowers stepped forward. The culture Adrian had once enabled, cold, profit-driven, ruthless, was finally exposed. The men who humiliated Elena lost everything. Their names disappeared from donor lists. Their influence evaporated. No speeches. No revenge. Just consequences. Weeks later, Adrian and Elena stood at the edge of a quiet coastline. No crowds. No cameras. Just wind, water, and truth. "I never thought I'd be worthy of love like this," Adrian admitted. "I thought money was the only thing that made me valuable." Elena took his hands. "I never wanted a savior," she said. "I wanted a partner who could stand beside me without trying to own me." He nodded. "And I never knew how to feel, until you taught me that feeling isn't weakness." They married quietly. No headlines. No spectacle. Just vows spoken slowly, intentionally, honestly. Elena remained who she always was, grounded, faithful, strong. Adrian became someone new, not a billionaire defined by control but a man defined by character. Together they built schools, funded shelters, created programs that lifted people who were once ignored, waitresses, volunteers, workers, dreamers. They never announced their wealth. They let impact speak. Years later, a young woman at a charity event dropped a tray. Before laughter could begin, Elena knelt beside her. Adrian followed. And the room learned, again, that love, respect, and humility are the greatest powers on earth.